All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to talk about one of the weirdest, most baffling feelings in modern dating, that sudden, out-of-nowhere feeling of complete and total repulsion. You know the one. The ick. So, picture this. You're seeing someone, maybe for a few weeks, and things are going really well. Your friends like them, you're getting excited, you're thinking, hey, this could actually be something. And then, bam, it happens.
It could be something so small. Something you can't even really put your finger on.
You know, something that if you wrote it down would sound absolutely ridiculous. But in that one tiny split second, everything just flips. It's like a switch just flips in your brain. That attraction, it doesn't just fade, it completely dies. And what's left is this cold, crushing wave of disgust. And the only thought in your head is, nope, gotta go, right now. So that feeling, that's what we call the ick. And look, it might feel like some weird random thing that only happens to you, but there's actually some really fascinating science and psychology going on here. So let's break down what's really happening inside your head when you get the ick. Okay, so to really get the ick, we have to meet the part of your brain that's kind of the villain of this story, the part that's secretly pulling all the strings. And that's the insular cortex. Now, its main job, evolutionarily speaking, is just to keep you alive. It's the thing that gives you that feeling of disgust, so you don't, eat rotten meat or drink sketchy water. It's a super basic but crucial survival tool. Okay, but here's where it gets wild. Our brains, they're kind of lazy. They don't have a whole separate system for social disgust. They use the exact same plumbing. So that feeling you get when your crush runs for a bus in a funny way, your brain is literally firing off these same alarm bells as it would if you were about to get food poisoning. And this right here, this is why the ick is so powerful and feels so impossible to shake. I mean, how are you supposed to reason with a part of your brain that is screaming, danger, this is a toxin? It's basically categorized this person as a potential threat. No wonder it's so hard to come back from. Okay, but here's the twist. It's not always about what they did. A lot of the time, the ick is actually more about us. It's like a mirror reflecting our own fears back at us. And that brings us to the world of attachment styles. So, super quick overview. There are 3 main styles. You've got anxious, who needs closeness, secure, who's pretty balanced, but the one we really need to look at for the ick is the avoidant style. For people with an avoidant style, deep down, real intimacy feels, well, it feels threatening, like it's going to swallow up their independence. So, what do you think happens when things start getting real? When the connection gets deeper? For someone with an avoidant attachment style, that closeness sets off a panic alarm in their subconscious. But let's be real, admitting, hey, I'm terrified of this intimacy is hard. So the brain looks for an escape route. And what's the perfect escape hatch? It finds one tiny, insignificant flaw and blows it up into this massive, deal-breaking ick. Yeah, it's pretty brilliant in a way. That's why some people call it the digital miracle of self-sabotage. Think about it. It lets you blame them. It's not, I'm leaving because I'm scared of getting close. It's, I'm leaving because, well, look at the way they use emojis. It's an ego saver. It gives you this perfectly valid external reason to run for the hills. And this all leads us to the biggest question, the real dilemma here. When you get that feeling, how do you know if it's your gut giving you a legitimate warning or if it's just your own fear sabotaging something that could actually be really good? You know, everyone always says, trust your gut. But honestly, that advice can be really tricky because sometimes your gut isn't your intuition. Sometimes it's just your past trauma wearing a trench coat trying to look like wisdom. So, okay, how in the world do you tell the difference? Well, a valid ick, your real intuition, is usually tied to something big, a violation of your core values, like they're rude to the waiter or they have fundamentally different beliefs about something important to you. But a trauma ick, that's the sneaky one. It often pops up when things are going great. If you suddenly get the ick because someone is too nice or too available or just seems genuinely into you, that's a huge red flag that the problem isn't them, it's your own fear of what a healthy relationship feels like. All right, so let's say you're listening to this and you're thinking, uh-oh, I think my ick might be self-sabotage. What do you do? Well, the good news is you are not stuck. There are things you can actually do. So let's go through a little roadmap for how to handle this. Step 1, the next time you feel it coming on, just pause and try to isolate the variable. Ask yourself, honestly, is the way they pronounce that word really the problem?
Or did this feeling just happen to show up right after we had a really nice, intimate moment? Step 2. A little bit of what you could call exposure therapy. Instead of running away from the discomfort, try leaning into it. Just for a little bit. See what happens. And third, check in with your actual values. Sociologists have this great distinction between mores, your deep core moral beliefs, and folkways, which are basically just minor social habits. If they violate one of your mores, like they're dishonest, that's a real red flag. But if they violate a folkway, like, I don't know, they wear socks with sandals, that's probably not a real reason to end things.
And this is so, so important. So many of us are taught to think that that anxious butterfly feeling is what passion feels like. But that calm, steady feeling of peace you get with someone, the thing your anxious brain might call boring, that's very often what a healthy, secure relationship actually feels like. Yeah, it doesn't have that crazy dopamine hit of the chase, but man, it has a much, much longer health span.
All right, so let's wrap this up with the big takeaways. First, the ick isn't just in your head. It's a real biological disgust response happening in your brain. Second, it's very often a defense mechanism for people with avoidant attachment styles to push intimacy away. Third, your biggest superpower here is learning to tell the difference between a real gut feeling and your own self-sabotage. And finally, just remember that real relationships are about grace. They're not a hunt for some non-existent perfect person.
So the next time that feeling hits you, that cold wave of nope, I want you to ask yourself one question. Is this ick a compass pointing you away from genuine danger, or is it a cage keeping you locked away from the very thing you actually want? Figuring that out, that could change everything for you. Thanks for tuning in.